Hey, this is Greg, and in this video, I'm going to help you get up to speed on Canva in about an hour. I've been teaching Canva to students all over the world for several years, and in this video, we're going to go over those must-know fundamentals that I have found to be the most important time-saving tips that you really need to know if you want to become an efficient user in Canva. So give me about an hour. I'm going to get you comfortable in Canva. I'm going to give you those crucial fundamentals that allow you to be an efficient user in Canva, and I'll also point you to some free challenge resources that are really going to help you take the next step. All right, let's dive right in. Now, if you are indeed totally new to Canva, your journey is probably going to start at canva.com. There is a mobile app you can use sometimes and also a desktop app you can download and use, but I find the browser-based version of Canva is going to work best. And so what does Canva do? Well, Canva is a tool for graphic design, for creating social media marketing assets, all sorts of things you can create related to marketing yourself, your brand, your business. So head on over to canva.com and that's where you're going to get started. Now, if you do not have an account yet, you can use this sign up link right here. And when you choose that here, you can hook it up to your Google account. That's how I have my Canva account for my login, but you can also just set up a username and password. So pretty simple, free to get started. So I'll let you figure out the rest of that step. You can get started for free, but a quick note on pricing should you decide to upgrade to their Pro version. Pro Canva ends up being about $15 a month, although if you pay yearly, you can get a little discount on that and get it down to about $10 a month. You can also do Canva for Teams, where if you work in a Teams and you want some tools for collaborating a little easier, then you can pay per team member. And there's also Canva for Enterprise for larger businesses. And if you are a teacher or a student, there's a chance you can get Canva for free. So I'll put a link down below in the comments if you're in education and you want to potentially get Canva for free. Now, I'm not going to go over all of the pro features that exist in Canva, but I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown. So basically, Canva comes with lots of templates with ready-made designs that are ready to go. We just have to make a few changes. That's one of the powerful features of Canva. That plus all the image assets, graphics, videos, all sorts of things, audio. So in the Pro version of Canva, you just get a lot more of these. That is really one of the primary big features of the Pro account. You just get a lot more ready-to-go templates, ready-to-go assets. And then also within that Pro Canva account, there are a lot more AI tools for creating content, for making edits to your images and other things. So I'm not going to go over all of that right here because we just don't have time, but I'll link this page down below. And when you're working in Canva, there's going to be this crown icon whenever something is a pro feature. So that's an easy way to tell within the Canva interface if something is a pro feature. You're going to see this crown icon. Again, we'll get into the differences between free and pro a little bit in this tutorial, but just know you get more ready-made assets. You get more tools available to you. You can still do a lot with the free version, but the Pro version is sometimes worth an upgrade. Now, if you do decide to upgrade, I'm going to have below sort of a 30-day free trial where you can just try it out. And then if you do end up signing up through my link, this is an affiliate link, so that means I could earn a small commission. Nothing changes for you, but I just want to be upfront and clear about that. That is going to be an affiliate link I put down below in the comments for a Canva Pro 30-day trial. Now, once you have a Canva account and you are logged in, then you will see the Canva home screen. So the Canva home screen might look a little different than this if you're doing this at a different time, but you're going to see something similar to this. So let's just go over how this screen is laid out and some things to be aware of. So primarily the purpose of the home screen is launching new designs, although you can also step back into your recent designs. So let's look at how this is laid out here. So first of all, we have this little search area up top here. Then we sort of have a quick start bar here. And then down below, it's going to show you some of your recent designs. So if you're just starting, you might not see anything down here, but as you create designs, you always can jump back into your recent designs from the home screen. Now, currently, you also have these two left menu bars in Canva. This larger one right here is just where you can see some folders you may have stored to quickly access Canva projects, Canva assets you may have stored. And to the left in this smaller menu bar, you have a number of different options. So the create button up here just lets you create new content. You can do this and you can launch a project from there, but you can also launch a project from here, up top. There are lots of ways to do similar things in Canva. Now under the projects tab is if you really want to go in depth and see all your folders and designs with different folders, you can come under this projects tab. Templates tab is just where you can navigate through different Canva templates for different types of content. But again, that is also something you can do on the home screen using this Templates tab here. Or if you come down here, you can click in different categories or use this More button here and find different types of content you can launch. The Brand tab is something, if you are a pro Canva user, it just lets you store some of your brand assets. So your favorite colors, fonts, images, logos, things like that. You can do that if you're a pro user under this Brand tab over here. Now the Canva AI button is where you see any AI content you may have created, and you can create new AI content here. But again, also something you can do from the home screen under this Canva AI button. So again, usually there are lots of different ways to do the same thing within Canva. Now under the More tab, we have apps. So there are lots of independent apps where you can hook them up to Canva just to increase the functionality you have within Canva. You also have a content planner if you want to schedule out social media. That's another pro feature where you can schedule out social media posts directly from Canva. And then Design School just has some different Canva training. Okay, but let's go back at this main part of the home screen here. So this row of icons here, I like to call this sort of the quick start bar. Just if you want to launch a project of a different content type. So if you're doing a presentation, if you're doing a video, if you're doing something for social media, you can use these buttons to just very quickly launch a project. You can also click more and see even more content types. So if you're doing social media, you could come and click on that. So lots of ways to navigate through here. And this is sort of the best bar, I think, if you're initially just launching a blank project, then a lot of times I'll come right under here. Now, just a note, if you for some reason click on something up here, you're going to lose that bar. But if you ever want to bring that back, just click on the home button over here in the left menu, and then you're going to bring that bar back here. Now, always lots of ways to launch things. So you could also come in here under the Templates tab up here. And if I click on this Templates tab here, then suddenly I can search for through millions of different templates and find the type of content I want to launch. So if I was doing something specifically and I knew what type of design it was going to be, so maybe this is for social media. So I come in here under social media, then you can jump into a different categories. You can see what are the different Instagram posts. And as you do that, you're going to see content update down here, and you're going to see lots and lots of pre-made designs where you can click on one. Accidentally started that, but you can click on one and then see a little bit about it. And if you want to customize that template, then you can go ahead and click that to launch the project. So that's one of the powerful things about Canva. They really have lots and lots and lots of templates. So you don't have to start with a blank screen. You can start with a completed design, and then you're just going to come in here. You're going to update text. You're going to sub out pictures, things like that. So it just keeps you from starting with that dreaded blank page. And again, if you're a pro Canva user, you get even more of those templates and those are ready to go assets. All right, but let's jump back to that home screen for a minute. I think we've covered the basics. Let me just come back here. So if you're anywhere here and you want to go back to the home screen, you can click this sort of sandwich menu here to bring up the sidebar again. And of course, you can jump back to that home screen. So again, the main purpose of this home screen is just launching designs, or you can launch one of your old designs, but also searching for new templates and launching new designs. Of note here, though, up top, you have these three buttons. So your designs, if you're doing that, then you're searching through your past designs. So if you know the name of a design, the name of a folder, you can type it in here. This is going to update down here. It's easy to find your old designs. If you're on this templates tab, like we were a minute ago, then again, you're searching for those starting templates, a new design where you start with a sort of a ready to go design, and then you can just sub in your own changes, your own updates. Third button up here is the Canva AI button, and this is if you want to use one of Canva's AI tools, so you can get it to help you create a design just by clicking on this and describing what you want. You can also click on this image button, and then you're creating an image. And then if we go click off of that, then you can come back here. You can create docs. There's a coding with Canva feature. So I can't get into all of this within this 1 hour, but lots of AI features underneath this Canva AI button. Okay, so this is the Canva home screen where you're going to be creating new designs, launching designs, and then you can come in here and search through your designs and folders. Okay, so the Canva home screen is sort of the launching point for new designs or getting back into an old design. So let's go ahead and launch a design and move on to talking about the Canva project interface. So let's imagine I wanted to create an Instagram story. So lots of different ways I could do that. I could type an Instagram story up here. I'm just going to click down here on social media, and then I'll see Instagram as a category. And there we go, Instagram story. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and it's opening up a blank design. Now let me backtrack for a second, go to the home screen. If I had instead wanted to sort of use a template, I could have scrolled down here and found a ready-made project. So if you click on one of these from here, I go ahead and it'll open it up. And then in here, if I go ahead and hit this play button to let this play, we'll see that this is a ready-made Instagram story. It's got a video loaded, it's got text, but I could come in here and instantly update this. So I'm just going to come under the Elements tab here, and I'll talk about this in a minute. But for right now, I'm just going to come down and we're going to go under the Videos tab. I'm just going to grab this one here. You can see if I drag it right over top, it'll actually replace the video that's in here. And if I wanted to come in here and create my own text, I could type my own text, and all the animation and things that were part of this template still exist. So if I just go ahead now and click the play button, we can see I have the new video and I have the new text. So that is a really important thing to understand about Canva, is just the power of templating. You can save a lot of time by having smart starting points instead of starting with a totally blank project. Okay, one important thing to understand about the Canva interface here is that it can change slightly depending on what content type you launched. Since I launched an Instagram story, a content format where it expects video, we can see I sort of have this thumbnail view along the bottom, sort of like a timeline. I can see the timeline here because when you launch a format like this, it expects video, you have this duration option which you can turn on and off. Let me just show you what that's going to do. So if I wanted to add sort of another thumbnail, another page to this animation, this design, I could do that, and I can see that that is 5 seconds here. I can drag it out so it's longer. I can add another one which I can make longer and shorter, and they're all sort of showing that variable length here in the length of the thumbnail we're seeing on this interface. And then you can scroll through your animation. You can use the play button up here. That's all with this duration button. I can also turn that duration option off, and then I can still play it, but I can no longer scroll through. I sort of lose that timeline, and you can see that they're all showing the same length. So important first note, when you're working with some kind of content that contains animation or video, having this duration option turned on is a very good idea. Now, the second thing to realize is that with certain traditional content types, we're expecting static content and not necessarily expecting animation, Canva will launch something that starts in page view instead of this thumbnail view. You can go back and forth with this button right here at the bottom, so hide page thumbnails, and now suddenly you see you do not have that duration option. So just know you can change back and forth with this button right here. However, with certain content types, static content, there are certain features you can't get back to if you don't start with the right project type. So that's just a sort of warning for you, is if you know your project's going to contain some sort of animation or video, choose an appropriate starting point. Now, this isn't that hard because if you're creating an Instagram story, if you're creating video, any type of content presentation where it thinks you might add video, it's going to go ahead and choose the right starting point for you, sort of this newer Canva interface that's going to open like this instead of opening in this page view. Okay, but just something to keep in mind, you do want to sort of launch appropriate project types. Okay, so that's the first little note about the interface. A few other things here is with this slider down here at the bottom, you can sort of scroll in and out of your design. If you want to fit the whole thing sort of within your working window here, you also have some presets under here where you can just choose fill or you can choose fit. If you choose fit, it's going to snap it so it definitely all fits within your viewing area, but you can scale however you want. Now, if I wanted to scale on my timeline here to be able to see a little bit better, I can click on this little icon instead of zooming in on the page. Then suddenly when I click on this here, now we're zooming in our timeline. So we see how the scale of our timeline is changing there. So that's just by toggling this little button on and off. Okay, so there's just a few basic things for you to be aware of. There's also this grid view over here to the right where if you do this, then suddenly you can jump in and see your individual pages like this, and then you can jump sort of back to the overall design using that button. So that's just some basics here along the bottom. Now let's talk about everything over here in the left menu, and then also the contextual bar you're going to see up top based on what type of content you create. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the home screen. So again, I'll use this sort of option right here. And I actually can just X out there, and that's also just going to take me back to the home screen. And what I'm going to do is just launch a blank presentation just so we have a little bit more screen real estate here in terms of what our actual page size is here, just so we can see a little bit more as we get into some of these options. So this left menu in Canva, this is where you're going to find all the assets that you're going to use to populate your design over here. So I can actually click on any of these tabs, and it's going to bring up sort of another menu here. And as I click through the different options here, we see how this menu here updates based on which tab I have selected over here. So we have design, elements, text, brand, uploads, tools, projects, apps, and then we see this little line. And currently in Canva, everything down through the apps tab shows up by default. And then as you work with different apps, as you navigate to different folders, you're going to see some other content down here. These are sort of fixed, but everything else down here I can actually click on, and I can actually X out these other things. So they're showing recent apps and other things I've used. But if I want to clean up my menu, I can just click through all these, and you can see since I work in Canva a lot, I actually have tons of things open here. But if I just want to clean up, it's a good idea periodically to clean that out so you have a more clean left menu. So let's just talk about these main tabs that you're always going to see so you understand what you do under each of these tabs. Now let's start with this design tab up top because that's a good place to start. And oftentimes this is where you're going to start when you're working in a new project type. And that's because under this design tab, you can actually still search through all those Canva templates that are potentially a starting point for you when you start a new project. So I mentioned before, you can do that on the home screen, but I often don't do that because it's very easily just to launch the content type you want. So if you want to do a presentation, you open a presentation. If you want to do an Instagram reel, you open an Instagram reel, a blank project, but then you can still come in here and search under the templates. So sometimes when you have a tab open, you'll sort of have sub-tabs. So we have templates, we have layouts, we have styles, but we're starting on this template section here. And then suddenly I can come in here and do a search up here and limit what I'm seeing down here. I can also just scroll down and see sort of the default results. But if I know that, for example, I want to do something that's sort of like a step-by-step presentation where I'm giving different steps for different things, I could do something like that. And then suddenly when I come in here, they're going to try to give me appropriate starting templates that they think sort of fit whatever search I have up here. So I could also just type by something like modern. So you have these different words you can type in up here. And then it also comes up here with some suggested words based on recent searches or what it thinks. So if I scroll using this little arrow here, I can see I can also search for professional, minimal. And if you click on any of these, again, all of these, the search bar up here, they're just filtering the type of results you get down here. Now, I can sort of scroll over these, and for some of these, it might be a single design page, but for other ones, it's going to be like even more pages, especially since we're in the presentation type of document, type of template. So since this is a Canva presentation, lots of times it knows that's going to be more than just one slide. So this one has 17 different slides. If I want to see these 17 different slides, if I hover over it, it's starting to show it to me, but I can also just click on it, then it's going to show them all here. If I wanted to add a single slide, what I would do is just with any design page highlighted here, I would click on it, and it's going to overwrite the current page. So that's kind of important because if I clicked on this title and I wanted to add this title page, and then I want to add a new page, well, if I just click on a new page, it's going to overwrite that page. So let me go back and put the title page here again. But then if I added a new page and then added another page, very easily you can just click and it's automatically going to add that new page. Now with presentations like this, when it has lots of pages, you can also apply all 17 pages at once. So if I click apply all, it's going to go ahead and give me every single page, all 17 pages. But again, I had 2 pages in here, it overwrote those 2. And so when you use this button or one of these, you have the potential to overwrite all your pages. If you're doing an individual page, just add a new blank page and then go ahead and click on it. So that's the way it works. It just clicks, it adds, and then you have that as part of your project. Then of course you would come in here and start making your updates. Click on things, make updates. We're going to talk about how you do all that. But these starting templates under this design tab, that's a very easy way to find something that's similar to the content you're creating and get a good design that's a good starting point so you're not starting from zero. Again, one of the big things in Canva is save yourself time, find a good starting template, that way you're not starting with that blank page. Now, whenever you're in a category like this, sometimes you'll see this back arrow just to get back to the previous menu. And remember, we have templates, we have layouts, and we have styles. So if we click on the Layouts tab, you have things like Match Style to Brand. So once you start to have a brand kit, if you're a Pro Canva user, sometimes you can come in here and click this button here, and then it's going to come in here and give you options for clicking one button. It'll do things like update your colors, update your fonts, so you can very quickly come in there and make some quick changes. Let me just actually click out of that. You can also come down here and find other styles. So we're seeing this is what the text is here, but if I wanted to go down here and I saw like I liked a different style better, like maybe this one is going to let me add a picture, I can click on that. Again, it's keeping the same text, but it's sort of reorganizing the layout of the page, giving me a picture placeholder. So under this layouts tab, sometimes it'll come in here and suggest different layouts for your existing content. So you're keeping mainly the same text. If you have an image or something, you may keep that as well, but it's just sort of reorganizing things on the page. Now, if you have a complex design, this doesn't always work, and honestly, you don't always need this, but it is an option to check out sometimes. Now, if you do something like a keystroke you didn't like, a command you didn't like, or I just added a layout and I don't love it, I love my previous one better, something important to know is you can use the Control-Z keyboard shortcut to undo something. That's on Windows. On Mac, it would be Command-Z, or right up here you have undo, redo buttons. So just click on that and suddenly you're going to undo your last command. So helpful to know you have undo and redo up here. Now the third option under elements is styles, and if you come in here under styles, basically it gives you a way to take a color scheme, take a different fonts, and immediately apply those to your page. So under here, I can scroll down and see, okay, I have this color palette on this page, but if I don't like this color palette, I can click on any of these color palettes and we can see that it automatically is updating the colors on my page. I could click see all to see even more and just click on one, click on different ones. So again, very quickly, a way to try different styles within your design, try different color palettes. And if you like something, you could click apply to all pages and it's gonna apply that color scheme to every page in your design. Now it's got color palettes here, but you can also come down here and do the same thing where you're applying different font sets. So again, very easily, the ability to go in here and change the style of your design by updating fonts, updating colors. So that's under the Styles tab. And so if you have particular brand fonts or colors that you use all the time, you're going to find those up here at the top of your menu here. You can switch between different brand kits by clicking. So I have a couple different brand kits in here. So if I select one, then suddenly I see any color palettes or fonts I might have associated with that brand, and I can very quickly apply those styles to my whole page. So this design tab is very helpful when you first start a project for just, having a good starting template, and then sometimes also locking down or updating those styles, those fonts, those colors within your design. So that is everything there under the design tab. Now, since we have lots of pages now, we have this thumbnail view at the bottom, this is a good time to talk about this very briefly. So if I want to go to any page, I can just click on that page. So if I can't see them all, I can scroll to find that page. So just click on the page and it's going to jump to that page. Now you also have these three dots here if you have something highlighted, where you can come in and see you have some different things you can do here. For example, if you wanted to delete a page, if you wanted to add some notes, resize the page, you could do all those things within this submenu here. So you can also get to that by just clicking on something and then right-clicking to bring up this contextual menu. And that works with elements too. If you click on something and right-click on something, then you have that contextual menu. But I can also just click on a page, and if I want to delete it, I can use the delete key on the keyboard. I can click on one page and then control click on another one to select pages even though they're not next to each other. Again, I could then delete those pages. Or if I wanted to select a range of pages, I could click on one, hold down the shift click key, click on another one. It's going to select those two I clicked on plus everything in between. And again, I could come in here, delete 4 pages, whatever I need to do. You can also duplicate pages, whatever you need to do. You can also just click pages and drag and drop them to sort of reorder them in your project view here. And again, you can also do that if you're in this grid view here. You can drag and drop to reorder pages. So lots of different ways to easily navigate around your document, to delete pages, to copy pages, to move pages around. That is all super intuitive and really easy to do here in Canva. Okay, so let's move on to talking about this Elements tab. The Design tab is often where you're going to start, but this Elements tab is probably the tab here in this left menu that you're going to use most often. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this to add a new page to the end of my sort of document here. And then here I am under this Elements tab. Under this Elements tab, this is where you're going to add all sorts of new content to your design over here. So if you come under this Elements tab and then you scroll down, you're going to see recently listed items, recently listed assets that you may have used, but then all sorts of different categories. So shapes, graphics, sheets. There's an AI image generator in here. The tables, photos, videos, audio, and so on. frames. So all sorts of different content, some of which we're going to discuss here, but basically anything you can think of for the most part, you can add it here under this Elements tab. Now, often what you're going to do is instead of coming down to one of those subcategories first, you're often just going to search. Let's just say I worked for sort of a dog grooming place and I wanted to find a picture of a dog. I could just type in dog up here. It's going to bring back lots of assets, and I can click on one of the categories here. I can click on one of the categories here. I can use these filter options here to limit, what sort of assets I'm getting back. In this case, I'll just click on the photos category. So I'm seeing photos of dogs, but if I only wanted to see sort of those vertical portrait style images, I could come up here and say, okay, I want vertical, and I want to make sure it's a pro asset. You could do all that by using this filter option up here. Now suddenly I'm getting all the options here, and anytime you're using this Elements thing, whenever you just click on something, it's just going to automatically add it to your project. So you click on something, it adds that asset over here to your project. So this is the Elements tab. So this is where you're going to come when you're searching for those photos, graphics, images, audio that you might want to add to your current project. Now, if you have your own assets that you want to make use of, you can come under this Uploads tab, and using this Upload Files button here, you can upload different content to Canva. And if you do that, then you might store it in a particular folder. And then once you have assets stored, projects stored, different assets from Canva, then you can come under this Projects tab. And this Projects tab, what it lets you do is it lets you go through your own design, through your own folders, through your own images. You can search. So maybe I have a dog that I've saved in the past, so I can come in here and see anything that I have within my own content folders within this Projects tab. So Elements tab, you're finding stuff that exists within Canva, all those free or pro ready-made assets that exist within Canva. But then if you're using your own assets, you're going to upload those via this Uploads tab. And then once you have things uploaded, you can use this Projects tab to navigate around your own folders, find your own content, and then the same thing, you can very quickly add some of your existing content right into your design. Now, if you're adding text, you don't find text under the Elements tab, and that's because text has its own tab. So if you click on the Text tab, then suddenly you can add a text box by clicking here, and it's just going to put a text box over there, which you can update with your own text over here in your design. But you can also come in and use one of these buttons here to just add a title, to add a subtitle. So the sort of styling that you get here is based on your brand kit. If you're a pro user, you can go into your brand kit, which exists under this option here. So if I come under brand, I can go in, and this is a pro feature. Under your brand kit, you can come in here and make updates. If you're not a pro user, you may get a couple options over here, but you get a lot more options for storing default styling, default colors, if you are a pro user. So again, under the text tab, you're going to see sometimes that's going to show up here up top, but then you also have default headings, subheadings. So you just click on something, you add it over here, but then you can still, of course, move it around, make changes, come in here and make styling changes. So it just gives you a quick starting point, but you're going to find that anything related to text all here under the text tab. Now, the only ones I haven't mentioned, because I did just mention brand kit, so I think the only one I haven't mentioned here are the tools tab and the apps tab. Under tools here, honestly, these are not things I use very much here, but you have some selection tools, you have a draw tool, you have another text option, you have a table option. So there's a little bit under here, but honestly, I don't really use the tools tab really at all here within Canva at this point. Maybe they'll add more things that I'll use later, but at this point, I don't find that overly helpful. Under the apps tab, here is when you can come in here and you can hook up other applications to work with Canva. They have ones in here that add special effects to text, that it might do something to your image. I don't always find those super useful. There are a few that I find useful. So over time, you can explore these, find ones you like. But there are some in here that are useful. For example, you can hook Canva up to your Dropbox account, to your Google Drive account, and then that lets you easily port over content directly here in the side window from that application here into Canva. So some of these things are helpful, and you're going to find those under the Apps tab. So click on the Apps tab, then you can search up here and find the apps that you want to work with in Canva. Okay, so super quick recap. This left menu is where you're going to be adding content to your design. So the design tab here, when you want to find a good starting template, a good starting point for your project. Then of course, if you want to look at pre-made layouts and styles you might want to apply, you have those options as well. Elements tab, that's where you're going to be searching for all types of different content. Type something in up here, apply some filters, go to the different categories. You can do all of that here under the Elements tab. If you just want to add text, then you're going to do that under the text tab. That's where you're adding different sort of pre-styled text to your design. Brand kit would be where you come in and manage some of those colors and text formats that you want to easily access, especially if you're a pro user. You have lots of options under this brand kit. And then uploads, of course, if you're bringing your own content, your own pictures, your own graphics, your own audio into Canva, then you can do that under the uploads tab. And as you upload something, you can actually check on it here and click on it, and then down here choose to move it to a particular folder. So that's a good way to just keep things organized within your Canva hierarchy. So you can create folders. Again, on that home screen when I showed you that projects tab, you can see all your folders, but you can click here as you upload something, move it to a folder, and then that's where this projects tab comes into play, because under here, you can come in here, you can search for content, you can search for your different designs, your different folders, image, videos. You can do all that very easily, and then very easily add some of that content to your open design that you're working on. Okay, so that's everything over here in this left menu. Okay, let's move on from talking about that left menu where we're adding things to our project to now actually working on the design page here. How do we work with different elements on the design page? There really are some must-know fundamentals that are going to save you tons of time, tons of headaches. So we're going to go over those must-know fundamentals now. To select and move something around Canva, you can simply left click with your mouse button on that element and then hold down that left mouse button as you move it around the screen. Now, when you release that mouse button, you're going to notice that that blue outline stays around the element. That means this is the active selective element, and when something is the active element, you can also move it with your arrow keys as well. So if I'm just tapping the arrow keys on my computer, we'll notice that that element is moving 1 pixel at a time. Now, if I want to move it 10 pixels at a time, I can hold down the Shift key and combine that with the arrow keys. That lets me nudge the active element 10 pixels at a time. So again, this blue outline lets you know that it is active. Now, if you want to select the multiple elements, you can also click and drag a box, and anything that you're dragging that selection box around becomes an active element. So I did it around the headline there, but if I were to click and drag out a box around both of these elements, then they're both going to be selected at once. Then I can drag them around at once. So again, that's just a left click, hold down the left mouse button, drag it out around multiple elements, and then you can move those around together. Now there's some other things to help you as you move as well. By default, there is snapping in Canva. So as you move something, it's going to attempt to align with the edges of other elements or the centers of other elements, or sort of positions on the page. It'll snap to the edge of the page. It'll snap to the center of the page. So you also have these automatic snapping. And as you drag things around, you're going to see these sort of blue guidelines that lets you know that sort of something's snapping into place. So you have this snapping that works as you drag things around to help you position the things as well. Now, the snapping is often helpful, but there are times when it can be cumbersome and you don't want it. So if you ever don't want it, you can just hold down the control key as you drag something around, and holding down that control key is going to disable snapping. Now, that's the control key on Windows. If you're working on Mac, that would be the command key. So again, the control or command key, you can drag something around and that snapping feature will be disabled. Now, I mentioned with snapping, it's usually going to be an object snapping into position in relationship to another object or in relationship to the page. And there is another way to access these features and have an even more control of how objects position in relation to one another, and also just precise control over exactly where an object is positioned on the page, and that is under this position menu. So with anything selected, you're going to see that position menu, even if you have the background selected here, but usually when you're working over an individual element, so you have that selected, you're going to go up to this position menu, and then under here you have a layers menu and an arrange menu. We'll talk about layers in a minute, but right now we're going to talk about arrange. So when you have one object selected, you can align that object in relationship to the page. So if I were to do this top option, it's going to line it up with the top of the page. If I were going to do the bottom option, it's going to line it up in relationship to the bottom of the page. And then down here at the bottom, under this advanced section, under the XY, you even have the XY coordinates of the sort of top left corner of your element. So I could come in here and I could set that to something like 0, 0 if I wanted to be in the top corner of my page. And we're going to see when I click out, it does reposition to that exact position on the page. So you really do have precise positioning options here within this position menu, especially if you go under the advanced menu here. Now there are also sizing options here, so I could control the height of the image, and if I wanted it to be 400 pixels instead of what it currently is, I could do that. I could lock the ratio if I wanted the width to scale up as I scaled up the height. So you have these sizing options under here as well. Now this was with one image selected, one element selected on the page. If I suddenly come in here and select two images at a time, or two elements at a time, doesn't have to be images, but so let's say I want to select this circle here and then also this woman here. So I'm going to hold down my shift key. Remember, if you have something selected, you can hold down the shift key to add to your selection. So now I have two objects selected. And when I do that, well, notice this switch from saying align to page to align elements. So suddenly when you have multiple elements selected, suddenly you have different options in here, and you can align those objects in relationship to one another. So for example here, if I just wanted to go in here and take the center of these images and line them up, and then the middle of the images and line them up, suddenly it's going to line them up like that. You could also go like this and align the bottoms of the objects, or the tops of the objects, or the left or the right edges. So lots of things you can do here with these alignment objects. If I wanted to align in a space sort of all these objects on my screen evenly, let's just say I had a row of circles for a minute, so let me just move that, and I'm just going to drag out some copies of this circle. And I'm just using the Alt key as I hold down the left mouse button to do that. But let's say I had a bunch of circles here and I wanted to spread them evenly across the screen. I could use these alignment options as well once I have all these selected. So I could select all these objects, and then you could come in here and we could say, okay, I want to align their tops. I want to space them horizontally so they're equally, and then suddenly I've done that. Now one key when you're doing that is you want to position the outer objects first. So let's say I wanted the row to start here, and then I wanted to start on this side of the page, roughly there. And then if I selected everything, it's not going to move those outer two when I use this vertical separation, when I use this horizontal separation. It's just going to keep those in place and then position all the other ones in relation to that, putting an equal gap between all these. And then of course we could align the tops. Or whatever we need to do to get a nice tidy row. So this is really helpful. You have all these positioning guides and options and ways to precisely position things on the page, ways to precisely position things in relation to one another. So very helpful. Anytime you have object or object selected, you can come under this position menu and see these options. Now the other crucial menu we have here under the position menu is this layers menu. So if I switch over to that now, we see a little visual representation of each layer here in our project. So basically each element gets its own layer here. And you can also select objects just by directly clicking on them here. So we saw you could click directly on something on screen here. And as we do that, it updates here in the layer, but you can also just click to select directly on the layer. Now you can also click on one and then control click on another icon, and they're both going to be selected. Or if you click on one at the bottom of the stack and then shift click on another one, it's going to select the other one and everything in between. So if I select it all the way up here, you can see all those layers become selected. So it gives us another way to select layers. Now you also have this little icon here. You can actually drag and position things in the layer order here. Now you might not know immediately just by moving one of these circles, okay, so what difference does that really make? Well, let's resize this a little bit and let's make this a different color just to make this really obvious. So I'm going to change the color of that circle. What if this circle was placed right there? Now suddenly I can't see the layer behind it. Maybe I want the other layer to actually be appearing on top of that. Well, if I went under my position menu to that layers menu, then suddenly I could say, let's bump that down in the layer stack until it's behind that circle. And then suddenly, there we go. Now we can see that other circle. So this kind of stacking order is really important when you have layers that might be partially obscured or totally obscured by another layer, and you want to control what is appearing in front of the other layer. Now we talked about selecting objects, so let me just do one more trick here. First of all, there are also keyboard shortcuts for this. So if I use the Control key on Windows, this would be the Command key on Mac, and hold that down, I can use my bracket keys just to very easily move things up and down in the layer stack. And sometimes if you right click on an object, you'll also see this contextual menu. And so we see here we have some alignment options right here under this contextual menu. Under the layer menu, we can also send it backwards or forwards using that. And when we do that, look right here, it shows us the shortcut keys for that. And I just mentioned that to you because remember, sometimes these shortcut keys, if you commit them to memory, they can save you time. But there's always going to be a way to do it without the shortcut keys. It's just helpful sometimes when it can save you time. But so let me just go ahead and click off that for a second. Now we know we have a circle hidden behind that. One more trick if you want to select that circle. I mentioned before you can hold down the control key and click with your mouse to disable snapping. So when you're moving something around, you can click and hold and you disable snapping. You can also control click over an object to select hidden layers below. So I use the control click to just find this circle behind it. So if you know you have something there, if you want to check if you have something there, just hold down that control key, click over it a couple times, and you're going to start grabbing the objects below. Let me just show you. Let me make this even smaller. I'll make this a different color now. So let's just put it a different color. Let's move that one back. And then this one, let's go to our layer order just so we can see. Let's put this one all the way at the back. And so if I click once here, it's going to select the object in front, but then watch as I control click, and you can watch over here to see what's actually getting selected. So if I control click, you see it finds the layer behind it. I control click again, it finds the layer behind that. So this control trick is just another way when you're trying to select an object hidden behind another object, but also you can always just come to the layers menu if you want to see this little visual representation, and then you can click right on that. So that is selecting and moving layers here in Canva. So we know I could select 3 circles at one time by clicking on one, shift clicking up to get all 3 of these, or I could have just come over here and dragged a box around to select all 3. But then of course, anytime I do that and click off, then suddenly I'm going to lose that selection. I have to reselect them all again. So if you ever have design elements where you have them spaced in relation to each other, how you want it, and you know they're going to stay together as a cohesive group, then you can select everything, and then with everything selected, look for this group option here under this contextual menu. And you also have, if you right click, even you go under group, there is a keyboard shortcut. So ungroup would be Control Shift G, but if you just do Control G, that's going to group things together. So again, you have the option up here, but you also can memorize that keyboard shortcuts. And then once you click off something, even when you click back on it, it stays as one group. You'll see it up here, how it's grouped together in the layers now. That just means you can move something around together. You can resize something together. But then with these circles, you notice the selection around all of them, but then also this individual selection here. So I can still select individual elements. And if I want to do something like come in here and change the color, I can still change an individual color. But when I resize, when I move around, they are acting as a group. So that's grouping and ungrouping in Canva, and grouping can be very helpful when you're working in Canva, when you have certain elements that you want to stay together that are going to be working together in your design. Let's talk a little bit about working with photos in Canva. So you can resize using these corner points, and when you resize with a corner point, it stays anchored at the opposite corner point. So if I wanted this corner to not move, I could resize with this opposite corner point. Now that's how it works by default. However, you can also hold down the Alt key, that's Alt on Windows or Option on Mac, as you resize from a corner point, and then the central point of the photo is going to stay anchored, and so you're sort of resizing from the center outwards. So that's a helpful trick to know. Now on photos, you also have these side handles, and when you drag in from a side handle, you're basically changing the frame within the photo that the photo sits in, so you're sort of cropping in to show a different area of the photo. Now there is a specific way to also enter the crop dialog completely. So with the photo selected, you can hit this crop icon here, or you can just double click with the left mouse button, and as you do, you're going to bring up this crop menu in this crop window. So when you're within the crop window, you can then sort of resize and reposition what's within the frame. So I could also scale this up so we get a different portion of the photo. So again, double click to get into the crop window. You can sort of scale up. If you need more room, you can always sort of scale down your whole slide for a second, and then you can decide to scale this down, reposition the photo within, scale up, and so you can do something like this and change what actually is within the frame of your photo. So that's very important to know, that you can not only sort of resize your photo using these corner points, you can scale in like this, but then you can actually double click into that crop window, and that's where you can really move things around and control what is within the frame, what actually shows. Now you can only size down until you hit the edges of your crop bounds. So I, for example, can scale down to there, but since I'm hitting these top and lower bounds of my crop area, I can't scale my photo any lower. Now, of course, if I brought this down, then suddenly I could scale in like this, okay? And then whenever you click out of this or click done, it's going to commit your changes, and then you're back here working within the interface like this, where you can drag the handles, you can drag the sides. But again, to enter that crop window, double click with the left mouse button or use this crop icon up here. So that is photos. Now, if you happen to be working with something that's a graphic, you may not have all the same options. You'll notice with this particular graphic here, I do not have those side handles, okay? So I cannot crop that way. However, there is still a crop thing here, so I can still enter the crop interface, and I actually can change the proportions and change what sits within this frame for this image. But since this is sort of a graphic and working a little different than this, I do not have those immediate crop handles the way I do on the sides of this photo. It doesn't mean I can't do it. I'm just gonna have to use that left click trick to actually get within the crop dialog. So just understand that sometimes different Canva elements are gonna work a little differently. For example, we have this, and when you drag a side handle, it's actually changing what's cropped in here. But with something like a shape here, when I actually drag in the circle, I'm actually changing this to an oval. So I'm changing the shape. So different elements, images, and then images that might be graphics versus raster images, they all might work a little differently, but just play around. You'll get the hang of all these basics for resizing, cropping, repositioning, things like that within Canva. Let's talk a little bit about working with text in Canva and see how some of the things we're starting to learn start to stack together as we work here. So to add text, you're just going to go under the text menu here, and you can add a heading, subheading, or body text. So these are just formatted a little differently. And if you have a brand kit, you can set up default styling for these things. But if you just click on something, it's going to add it to the screen. You can double click in there to change the text. And of course, with an element selected, you get a contextual menu up here. So of course, we're seeing different options for this text than we did before when we were working with an image. So now with a text, we have things like here where we could come in and change the size. So we can come in here and increase the font size. We can change actually what font it is by going under here, changing the font. So all these different things, we want it to be capitalized. We don't want it to be capitalized. We want it to be bold if there's a bold option for that particular font. All these things, color, everything, we have all these up here. So let's go ahead and change this font to something like this. And let's say I wanted to add a subheading as well. So we have a subheading, and then we'll add a little body text there. And so again, when you have things like this, you may want to change the alignment. So let's get it all left aligned. Let's make sure this is left aligned. Let's make sure this is left aligned. Now, all the things we discussed before still apply. We can move things around. So if I can click on this, I can click and drag. You'll notice if something gets small enough in Canva, you get this little arrow icon down below where you can just use that to click and move instead of actually clicking on the text itself. You still can click on the text itself, but you can also just use this easy handle down here. But you'll notice when I move things, I still get the same snapping that we talked about before. If I select all of these elements, I still get the same position menu options where I can go in here and I can sort of align things together as we did before. So all these same options still apply. Now we still have some new options with text though. You have this magic right tool that's going to appear. So if you're adding text, you can use it directly by adding something using this magic right option. But also if you click on any text in your document, you'll also find this little pencil icon. And if you click on that, you get a whole bunch of options here. So if you have something written out, you can change the tone, you can shorten it, you can fix spelling. You can also just transform it into something different. So I'm going to type this and I'm going to say generate one paragraph of lorem ipsum. So you could tell it to write something on a particular subject. I'm just asking for lorem ipsum, which is actually just dummy text that can be used as a placeholder. So if you're ever building out sort of a template where you know it's going to hold a paragraph of text, but you don't want to be distracted by what the text actually is, you can use something like this lorem ipsum. When you do that, it's going to go ahead and actually generate it for you. So this is using AI to generate something on the fly. We can replace it. We can come in here. We can change, the size of this. So lots of things we can do. And then of course positioning, get our spacing the way we want it. Once we have the spacing the way we want it, we could group these together. So if we move things, we didn't lose that spacing. So I could group these together. Now I could still come in here and I could add new lines of text so I could type out more. But what about something like this? What if I were to add an image to this? So let me just come under my elements. I'll just grab this image real quick. Let's say I'm going to have this image right below my text here, but maybe in future iterations of this design, maybe I might want to add some text. Well, if I come in here right now and I just add another line of text, eventually that text is going to sort of cover over my photo. That's not actually what I want to happen. So let me just hit Control Z a couple times to undo that. If I were to group everything together though, including the image and this text as part of the group. Now, because I have that grouped, now watch what happens if I come down here and I add more text, I add more text, I add more text. Well, notice that now, because I have things grouped together, I can now add that text, and this is going to resize in a smart way. It's going to reposition to sort of maintain the positioning that exists within the group. So this is just an example of how these things stack together. So with something like grouping, sometimes you can group things in a smart way so that when you're building out a template, things work the way you want it to. Just another example of this grouping thing. I'm going to do a whole new page. Again, let's just imagine we had a text here that was a headline. Maybe this was going to be a title slide. Sometimes you might change the title, but maybe you always want it to stay in the center of the page, regardless of whether that's one line, two line. And maybe we have a rectangle behind this. So let's just add a rectangle right here. And I'm going to have it like this. Maybe I want sort of this amount of padding on each edge, so a little bit of space here, 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 and here. Of course, if I came in here and I add that second line, what happens? It goes outside the rectangle. We want it to be maintained by this rectangle. So once again, if I were to come in here and I was going to make use of this grouping option and group things together, I could then go under and change the size of this by adding another line, and we'll notice the way the text box expands down and still maintains my text within it. The rectangle expands down. Now, there's actually another text option which is kind of important. So when you're working with text, if you go under the advanced settings, there's actually this anchor text box. We notice when I added a line of text, it put it below here. You can also have it move the text up, or you can have it expand on both sides. So if I had this exactly centered within the page, and I always wanted to add equal spacing on both sides so it stayed centered as I expanded out, I could use this middle option here. And now when I add a line, we'll notice that everything stays perfectly centered within the page. So again, this is just an example for you about getting to know these different advanced options you have, understanding how things like grouping can change how something works. Things can start to work dynamically together. And when you're building out templates and things where you want to come in and have it act a certain way to save you some time, that's where knowing these little tricks is very helpful. Let me come back to this example real quick and show you another content type in Canva, which can be very helpful. So let me just ungroup all of this real quick. Then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this photo, because instead of the photo here, what I'm going to use is another element you can find in Canva, and this is called a frame. So if you search for frame, you don't want this kind of frame, but if you come under the all, you're going to see this frames category. And I usually just add this first one here, but there are all sorts of different frames here, different shapes. But I usually use this first one because this first one is one you can resize to make any dimensions you want. And basically this acts as a content placeholder, and you can drop in images, you can drop in videos, you can even just put a solid background color in here. But it is very helpful when you're building out things like templates to have something where you can automatically just easily drop in new content. Let's see what I mean here. So let's just search for something like dog. We're going to go under photos here, and then you can just very easily just drag an image, drop it right in, drag an image, drop it right in. So it acts as a placeholder and gives you something you can very easily update in the future if you're doing a different version of a document or presentation or whatever. And also something that's nice about frames, and this works with photos too, but if you come in here under the edit menu, let's just say you make some different adjustments on your photo. So under photos, you have the edit option. You have all these tools. We don't have time to talk about all these, but let's just say you came in here and you added a really quick filter. So let's do one that's obvious. So let's just give it sort of let's go way down here. Let's find something. Let's just use this antique effect here. So let's say you did something like that with a photo and you have that applied to your photo in your frame. If you just drag in a new photo in that frame, it's automatically going to take on that new filter. So anyways, frames are just an easy way to have sort of a content placeholder for images, videos, stuff like that. Now, another thing that is helpful to know if you ever get something in your document and you have it positioned exactly where you want it and you don't want to accidentally move it around, you can click on something and use this lock icon. Then suddenly it's something where you can't really select and move it. So it just stays safely there in place until you click on it again. You get this dotted outline and then you can unlock it. And then suddenly it's something you can select and move again. Here, let's try that one more time. Unlock. So there we go. Now we can move it around. So that's just the ability to lock something into position, into place in Canva. Now, I did mention previously when you're dragging things around, sometimes you'll get those auto guides that show up. Well, you can also add your own guides. So you'll see right now at the top and the side of the screen here, I have these rulers. And if you don't see these rulers, you can come under the File menu under Settings, and you can show Hide Rulers and Guides. But that's also the Shift+R keyboard shortcut. So that's a good one to remember. Just holding down Shift and tapping R, you can show and hide these rulers. And whenever you have these rulers on screen, you can just left click on a ruler, keep that left mouse button held down. You'll notice when I sort of hover over this, you notice how my cursor changes to this black two-way arrow. And when it does, if I just click and hold with the left mouse button, then I can click and drag out a guide wherever I want it. I can do the same up here, just click and drag out. And so this is a helpful way if you want to set up guides, then suddenly you have a guide in place and you can easily get things to snap to that guide when you drag it around. So adding your own custom guidelines like this can be very helpful. Now let me just add a new page here to show you. You can also come in here and add sort of a whole grid system using your own custom guides. And there is another tool for that too. If you go under File Settings, again, this time we're going to come down and we're going to look for the custom guide. So let's go under Add Guides. Actually, it says Add Guides right here. And then you're going to be able to add, one of these preset layouts, either 12 columns, 3 columns, or a 3x3 grid, or even better, you have this custom option. So if I come under the custom option here, suddenly I can tell it how many rows and columns I want. So maybe I'm just going to make this something simple like 2 rows. But I'm going to have it be a 4-column layout. So I'll put 4 here for my column number. And the gap would be the space I want in between. So let's just set that to something like 50 pixels. And then again down here, I'm going to also have a 50 pixel gap between my rows. And then if we want margins on the side, so sort of above and below and on the right and left side, you can also type in margins here. Now, whenever you're typing these out, if you wanted to sort of apply the change, go ahead and type the number and then click into another cell, and it's going to automatically update your design over here. And when you have it exactly the way you want it, you can go ahead and boom, then go ahead and add that there. So now suddenly you have the ability to add this underlying structure to your design. Just helps you a lot when you're positioning things, when you're laying out a design. So if you look at the design on screen now, you can see that nice alignment is maintained between the items. You can see I have consistent spacing between the columns, and that is because I used that underlying guide. Now I have it hidden right now, but I just hit Shift+R to bring back my guides. We can see that I do have that underlying 4-column, 2-row grid structure. Now, whenever you do this, you don't have to follow it strictly if you don't want to. You can see I sort of break through the guideline with this blurb here. And if I wanted to, I could take this photo and have it just sort of break the guidelines. So you can break the rules, but it does give you some nice underlying structure when you're setting up and laying out a design. So having some sort of underlying grid system like this can be helpful when you're trying to lay out a new design. So just know you have that ability to use these custom guides. We are approaching the 1 hour mark, so I do want to start wrapping up, but there are 2 things I want to mention quickly that are super important when it comes to having a smart, efficient workflow in Canva, and that is the smart use of folders, and that is the smart use of templates. So we started to talk about folders before, and any Canva user, even free Canva users, can have as many folders as you want. So I mentioned before on the home screen, if you come under this projects tab from the home screen, then under here you can navigate through your folders. You can use this button here to create new folders, and you can have subfolders within folders. So you can have subfolders to whatever level you want. So think about a structure that makes sense for you. Now, what can you store in folders? Well, you can store images in folders. So we mentioned under the Uploads tab, if we went to Uploads, when you upload images, you can immediately click on an image and move it to a folder. And so if I click on this, it's going to ask me to tell it what folder I want it to put in. I can create a new folder and put it in a new folder. So I do recommend anytime you create a new asset in Canva, put it into a folder. You create a new image, put it in a folder. You find an image you like. So in other words, if I come in here under the Elements tab, I can even find pre-made Canva elements and then I can move those to a folder. So your own elements, those free Canva elements, those pro Canva elements, you can move all those things to a folder. Now, you're also saving off your design files to a folder. So we just created this design here. And so maybe this is something where this sort of design I might want to get back to in the future, but also I might want to use again in the future when I'm creating similar content. And this is where the idea of templating comes into play. Now, as a pro Canva user, you can do something called creating a branded template, and that means you can save something off as a branded template, and then when you relaunch it, it's going to make a copy of that. But even if you don't have that, you can still use a templating system as a free Canva user just by making smart use of folders. Let me just show you what I mean. So we have this item right here. So let's go ahead and save this off to a folder. So I'm going to go File, and I'm going to move, and I can move it to any folder I want. So I can search for something. Let's just see if I have a folder called templates. So I'll search for that. If I don't, I can create a new folder, but I have one right here. So I can go ahead and move it to this templates folder. Now that's in this templates folder. Now, sometime in the future, if I were to then come in to my home screen here and create a new project, and let's say I wanted to make use of that design or even just a page within that design, then I could come within the project interface under this projects tab, and then suddenly I can search for folders. What folder am I searching for? I know I put that in the templates folder, so I can type templates and then make sure I'm under folders here. Here's my templates folder. Here's the design I just saved. If I want to see the individual pages, I can click on this. Here are the different pages. Here's the one I want to add to this design. So boom, I click on it, and just like that, suddenly I'm in under a new design, making use of this page from an old design. And then if I want to find new content, well, maybe I have images saved off as well. So again, once again, under this projects tab, I could search for something particularly. Let's say I have some wildlife images, and so I might very quickly come in there and be able to grab something and boom, update this content. So folders are hugely important, and also this idea of templating is super important. Folders, one, let you save off your various favorites things, whether it be designs, whether it be fonts, whether it be colors. You can very easily access those and bring them into any project, and that's saving you a ton of time. Then when you talk about saving off actual design templates, in other words, a design we have lots of the content sort of built out, or at least placeholders built out. You know, you're going to come in, you're going to update some text, you're going to update images, but you're not starting from zero. So folders, super important. Templating, super important. Make sure you build those into your Canva workflow. You're just going to be a better, more efficient Canva user and someone who is saving a lot of time. Okay, so final thing we're going to cover in this tutorial. Once you're done with your design, you're ready to share it, you're ready to download it. How do you do that? Well, you're going to come up here to the right corner and you're going to use this share option here. And if you just want to download something, then you can come under here and you can find this download option right here. And under here, you're going to have options for PDF, MP4, JPEG, PNG. Of course, you're choosing what makes the most sense here. And you can go ahead and download that, tell it where you want to put it on your computer, and go ahead and download it to your computer. Now, you have other sharing options as well. You can hook up social media accounts, and then if you want to publish something directly to Instagram, you can do that. You have a lot of other options under here as well. You can click to see all the other options here. I'm not going to cover all of these individually. Just know if you want to download something, if you want to share something when you're done, that's when you're going to come up and make use of the share menu. It's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy to figure out. So that's where you're going to download or share your final work. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope the fundamentals we went over in this video really help you get up to speed with Canva quickly. If you want a logical next step, I have a Canva Zero to Hero challenge, which I make free to any of my email subscribers. So I will post a link to that down below. It's actually on the free Canva resources page, so you can find a lot of other cool stuff there as well. Feel free to sign up for anything that makes sense for you. Again, those are all free resources. But in that particular challenge file, you can take a lot of challenges that reinforce these Canva fundamentals, and then each challenge exercise comes with its solution videos. So again, you can watch something to just reinforce everything we learned in this video. Now, obviously beyond that, there's still lots to learn about Canva. I cover lots of those topics on this channel, so feel free to subscribe below, hit that bell notification so you'll get notifications anytime I come out with a new video. And of course, if you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in the comments below this video. Thanks again for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope to see you soon back on this channel. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.